The council chamber of the Galactic Federation buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 species gathered for the emergency session. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vrelon Empire stood at the central podium, his 6 arms trembling as he activated the holographic display. The massive screen flickered to life, showing what appeared to be a standard wildlife documentary. Honored delegates, Zethkar's voice cracked through the universal translator. What you are about to witness has been classified at the highest levels for over 3 cycles. However, recent events have forced our hand. The footage began innocently enough. Lush green landscapes filled the screen, with strange bipedal creatures moving through dense forests. These beings walked upright on 2 legs, had only 2 arms, and possessed minimal natural weapons. No claws, no venomous fangs, no armored hide. They appeared almost pathetically vulnerable. "Behold," Zethkar announced, "the apex predator of the planet designation Earth 3, locally known as humans." A ripple of confused, chittering, and mechanical translations filled the chamber. The crystalline delegate, Shardsinger Morvac, projected her thoughts directly into the shared communication network. "Ambassador, surely there has been an error in classification. These creatures appear to be simple herbivores, possibly scavengers at best." The footage continued, showing humans using primitive tools made of wood and metal. They hunted large beasts, using nothing but sharpened sticks and coordinated tactics. The delegates watched in growing bewilderment as these seemingly weak creatures brought down massive predators through persistence and teamwork. "I fail to understand the concern," rumbled General Thorax of the insectoid hives, his mandibles clicking dismissively. "My warrior drones could eliminate thousands of these soft-bodied weaklings without sustaining a single casualty." Zethkar's expression grew grave. "That, honored general, is precisely what the hegemony believed when they attempted to claim the human homeworld 6 months ago." The hologram shifted to display a different scene. Sleek, metallic ships descended from the sky, their hulls gleaming with advanced weaponry. The hegemony forces were known throughout the galaxy as ruthless conquerors who had subjugated over 200 worlds with minimal resistance. "Initial contact proceeded as expected," Zethkar continued. "The humans possessed no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no faster-than-light communication. Their most advanced vessels barely managed to leave their planet's atmosphere. The hegemony classified them as a Level 2 civilization, suitable for immediate annexation. On screen, the humans' primitive aircraft engaged the alien vessels. Explosions filled the sky as human jets were effortlessly destroyed by superior technology. Cities burned under orbital bombardment. It appeared to be a typical conquest, over before it truly began. The initial phase lasted 43 standard hours. Zethkar's voice grew quieter. The hegemony established 3 major staging areas and began systematic pacification operations. Resistance was expected to collapse within days. The footage jumped forward, showing hegemony ground forces advancing through human settlements. Soldiers in powered armor moved with mechanical precision, their weapons reducing buildings to ash with casual efficiency. Human defenders fired projectile weapons that barely scratched the alien armor. What happened next defied all established patterns of conquest, Zethkar said, his hands shaking as he manipulated the controls. The humans did not surrender. They did not flee to remote locations. They did not attempt to negotiate. The scene changed again. Now it showed something unprecedented. Humans attacking with suicidal determination. They strapped explosives to their bodies and detonated themselves among enemy formations. They dug tunnels and emerged behind enemy lines like burrowing parasites. They used their own fallen as bait, hiding weapons among the corpses. "Barbaric," whispered the ethereal representative, its gaseous form shimmering with distaste. "Surely such desperate measures achieved nothing of significance." Zethkar's laugh contained no humor. The humans began targeting individual hegemony soldiers with primitive chemical weapons. Not to kill them quickly, but to cause prolonged, agonizing death. They broadcast the screams across all communication frequencies. Within days, Hegemony forces began experiencing what their psychologists termed cascade psychological breakdown. The delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Psychological warfare was considered a tool of last resort, used only by the most desperate civilizations facing extinction. The display showed a new development. Human children, apparently no more than adolescents, launching coordinated attacks on supply convoys. They moved through urban environments like ghosts, striking without warning and disappearing before retaliation was possible. The humans militarized their entire population, Zethkar explained. Not just adult males, as is standard, but females, elderly, and juveniles. Every human became a potential combatant. The hegemony found themselves fighting an entire species rather than just its military. Ambassador Kretok of the Reptilian Confederacy raised a scaled hand. Surely the hegemony's technological superiority eventually prevailed? A few primitive tricks cannot overcome plasma weaponry and orbital supremacy. The screen flickered to show a more recent recording. Hegemony soldiers, once confident and methodical, now moved in tight formations, their weapons constantly aimed at shadows. Their movements had become erratic, paranoid. Several were seen firing at nothing, their nerves shattered by constant guerrilla attacks. The humans learned, Zethkar said simply. They adapted to every tactic, countered every strategy. When the hegemony began using energy weapons, humans developed ways to redirect the beams using primitive mirrors. When aerial bombardments increased, they moved underground. When supply lines were heavily guarded, they poisoned water sources with biological agents. The footage showed something that made several delegates recoil in horror. Humans had begun wearing the armor and weapons of fallen hegemony soldiers. They had reverse-engineered alien technology with impossible speed, turning captured equipment against its creators. This is why we have gathered today, Zethkar announced, his voice heavy with implications. 3 days ago, the hegemony officially withdrew from the human homeworld. A force that had conquered dozens of star systems was defeated by a species that had never left its own planet. The humans are now attempting to contact other civilizations. They want to establish diplomatic relations. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Species that had seemed confident moments before now appeared deeply troubled. If humans could defeat the hegemony through sheer determination and adaptability, what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? There is more, Zethkar continued, raising his voice above the commotion. Our long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in the human system. They are constructing vessels of unknown design. Our xenobiologists believe they are preparing for interstellar travel. The implications were staggering. A species that fought with such relentless determination would soon have access to the galaxy at large. The peaceful civilizations that had grown comfortable under the Federation's protection suddenly felt very vulnerable. What do they want? Asked the aquatic representative, its voice bubbling through liquid medium. Zethkar's expression grew even more troubled. That, honored delegate, is what we must determine. We have scheduled first contact for tomorrow. A human delegation is en route to our border space. They claim to come in peace. Do we believe them? Asked General Thorax. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. I do not know, Zethkar admitted. What I do know is that underestimating humans has already cost the hegemony everything. We cannot afford to make the same mistake. The recording ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. The galaxy's most feared military force had been broken by creatures that barely qualified as sentient by most standards. The humans were coming, and nobody knew what that would mean for the established order of the cosmos. The Federation border station Harmony's Edge had been hastily retrofitted for the unprecedented first contact. Captain Maria Santos stepped through the airlock, followed by her small diplomatic team. She moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to dangerous situations, her eyes constantly scanning for threats even in this supposedly neutral environment. Ambassador Zethkar waited in the reception chamber, flanked by security personnel from 6 different species. The alien diplomat had prepared extensively for this meeting, studying every available piece of intelligence about human behavior. Nothing had prepared him for actually being in the same room with one. Welcome to Harmony's Edge, Zethkar began, his translator struggling with the formal diplomatic protocols. I am Ambassador Zethkar, representing the Galactic Federation. We are honored by your presence. Captain Santos nodded politely. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I'm Captain Maria Santos, representing the United Earth Government. We're looking forward to establishing peaceful relations with your Federation. The word peaceful hung in the air like a challenge. Every alien in the room had seen the footage of what human peace looked like when threatened. Their idea of diplomacy apparently included psychological warfare and weaponized suicide attacks. Perhaps we should begin with cultural exchange, suggested Dr. Yithron, the Federation's chief xenopsychologist. We are curious about human society. Your species appears to have some unusual characteristics. Captain Santos smiled, though several aliens stepped back instinctively at the display of teeth. We'd be happy to share. What would you like to know? Your military doctrine, General Thorax interjected bluntly. Your forces demonstrated tactics we have never encountered. How do you justify using juveniles as combatants? The human's expression darkened slightly. We don't use children as soldiers by choice, General. But when faced with extinction, every human becomes a defender. We have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. End quote. But surely there are limits to acceptable behavior in warfare, pressed Dr. Yithron. The biological weapons, the psychological attacks, the use of corpses as camouflage. These exceed all galactic conventions. Captain Santos leaned forward, her voice taking on an edge that made the translator circuit strain. Doctor, let me ask you something. If aliens invaded your homeworld, killed your family, and planned to enslave your people, how far would you go to stop them? Within reasonable bounds, Dr. Yithron replied automatically. There are rules of engagement, protocols for surrender, established methods of rules made by whom? Captain Santos interrupted. The hegemony certainly didn't follow any rules when they started bombing our cities. They didn't show restraint when they targeted civilian populations. Why should we limit ourselves to rules created by people who would see us enslaved or dead? The logic was simple and terrifying. Humans apparently recognized no authority beyond their own survival instincts. They would use any method, break any convention, abandon any principle if it meant protecting their species. This is precisely our concern. Admiral Crexton of the Aquatic Coalition spoke up. Your species appears to lack the moral framework necessary for civilized galactic citizenship. How can we trust beings who acknowledge no higher law than their own continuation? Captain Santos was quiet for a long moment, studying the assembled aliens. When she spoke again, her voice was surprisingly gentle. Admiral, you're looking at this backwards. We didn't choose to be ruthless. The hegemony forced that choice on us. Every extreme measure we took was a response to their aggression. We don't want to be monsters. We want to be neighbors. But you retain the capability for such measures, observed Ambassador Zethkar. What guarantee can you provide that human expansion will not threaten peaceful species? The same guarantee any species can provide, Captain Santos replied. None. We can promise that we have no interest in conquest or domination. We can demonstrate our commitment to peaceful cooperation, but ultimately, trust must be earned through actions, not words. She activated a small holographic device, displaying images of Earth's recovery efforts. Cities being rebuilt, refugees returning to their homes, humans working together to heal the wounds left by invasion. This is what we chose to do after the hegemony withdrawal, she continued. We could have used their abandoned technology to build weapons of revenge. Instead, we're using it to repair the damage they caused and to reach out to other civilizations. We're here because we believe the galaxy is big enough for all of us. The aliens exchanged uncertain glances. The humans' capacity for violence was undeniable, but their restraint in victory was equally noteworthy. They could have pursued the retreating hegemony forces, potentially dealing a devastating blow to their enemies. Instead, they had focused on reconstruction and peaceful contact. Your species fascinates us, admitted Dr. Yithron. You demonstrate both extreme aggression and remarkable compassion. How do you reconcile these contradictory traits? Captain Santos laughed, the sound making several guards reach for their weapons before they caught themselves. They're not contradictory, Doctor. They're complementary. We're aggressive in defense of what we love, compassionate in protection of what we value. The strength to fight and the wisdom to show mercy aren't opposites. They're both parts of being human. What do humans want from the galaxy? Asked Ambassador Zethkar directly. Knowledge, trade, friendship. Captain Santos counted on her fingers. We want to learn about other cultures, share our own discoveries, and find our place among the stars. We want our children to grow up in a universe where differences are celebrated rather than feared. And if other species reject this offer of friendship? General Thorax asked pointedly. Captain Santos met his compound eyes without flinching. Then we leave them alone. The universe is vast enough for everyone to find their own path. But if anyone tries to impose their will on humanity through force, she shrugged eloquently. Well, you've seen what happens then. The threat was delivered so casually, so matter-of-factly, that it carried more weight than any dramatic declaration. Humans apparently viewed violence as simply another tool, to be used when necessary and set aside when not. We have a proposal, Captain Santos continued, pulling up another holographic display. A cultural exchange program. Send representatives to Earth. See how we live. Learn about our society. We'll do the same with volunteer Federation worlds. Let's build understanding gradually, rather than trying to solve everything in one meeting. The proposal was reasonable, almost disappointingly normal, yet every alien present understood the subtext. The humans were confident enough in their abilities to invite potential enemies into their home territory. They were either incredibly naive or completely certain they could handle any threat. There is one more thing, Ambassador Zethkar said carefully. We must ask about your intentions regarding the hegemony. They represent a significant threat to galactic stability. Captain Santos's expression hardened. The hegemony chose to make themselves our enemy. As long as they leave humanity alone, we have no quarrel with them. But if they threaten us or our allies again... She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. We'll be ready. The meeting continued for several more hours, covering trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and communication protocols. But the real negotiation had happened in those first few minutes. The aliens had learned that humans could be reasoned with, bargained with, even befriended. But they could not be intimidated, conquered, or controlled. As Captain Santos prepared to leave, Ambassador Zethkar pulled her aside for a private word. Captain, may I ask you a personal question? Are all humans like you? She considered this carefully. I'm probably more diplomatic than most, actually. You should meet our Marines sometime. They're the really scary ones. The ambassador's 6 arms trembled slightly at the thought of meeting humans who were more intense than this remarkably calm diplomat. Perhaps we should start with the cultural exchange program first. Captain Santos grinned, once again causing several security personnel to tense involuntarily. Probably wise. We'll send our friendliest representatives. You'll love our kindergarten teachers. They're experts at managing difficult situations peacefully. As the human delegation departed, every alien present shared the same thought. The galaxy had just become a much more interesting and dangerous place. Humanity had announced its arrival not with conquest or submission, but with a simple message: treat us well, and we'll be the best friends you ever had. Threaten us, and discover why the hegemony learned to fear a species that had never left its own planet. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and nobody knew quite what that would mean for the rest of the galaxy. 6 months after first contact, the human embassy on Galactic Federation Central had become the most popular destination for young aliens seeking adventure, and the most feared posting for experienced diplomats. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez had arrived to find a galaxy still struggling to understand what humanity represented in the cosmic order. The breakthrough came during what would later be known as the Bird Incident. Dr. Kilithan, the Federation's leading xenobiologist, had requested permission to present new footage of Earth's ecosystem to the Scientific Council. She had been studying human behavioral patterns and believed she had identified a critical weakness in their psychological makeup. "Honored colleagues," Dr. Kilithon announced to the assembled scientists, "I have discovered something that may explain the apparent contradiction of human nature. They demonstrate extreme aggression against advanced threats, yet our cultural exchanges have revealed puzzling behavioral inconsistencies." The holographic display activated, showing high-definition footage of Earth's wildlife. The scientists leaned forward with interest, expecting to see more examples of the terrifying predatory species that had produced humanity. Instead, they watched in bewilderment as the footage focused on small, colorful flying creatures that appeared to be constructing elaborate nests in trees. "These creatures are called birds," Dr. Kilithon explained. "They are among Earth's most successful species, found in virtually every environment. Note their size relative to humans." The screen showed a human hand next to one of the creatures for scale. The bird was roughly the size of a human finger, with hollow bones and delicate features optimized for flight rather than combat. Now observe human behavior when encountering these creatures. The footage shifted to show humans interacting with birds. Scientists throughout the chamber gasped in astonishment. Humans were feeding the creatures, building artificial nests for them, and even allowing birds to construct homes on human dwellings without interference. "This makes no sense," rumbled Professor Thekmore of the Crystalline Collective. "Humans eliminate threats with extreme prejudice, yet they actively nurture creatures that invade their territory." Dr. Kilithan nodded enthusiastically. "But that is not the most remarkable observation. Watch this." The new footage showed humans encountering injured birds. Instead of ignoring the wounded creatures or eliminating them as potential disease vectors, humans were carefully treating their injuries, providing medical care, and releasing them back into the wild. They spend their own resources healing creatures that provide no strategic advantage. Dr. Kilithan continued. "They create protected areas where birds cannot be disturbed, even though these areas could be used for human expansion. They have entire organizations dedicated to bird welfare." The scientists exchanged confused glances. This behavior pattern made no evolutionary sense. Successful predator species typically eliminated competition for resources, not nurtured it. "Perhaps they are a food source?" suggested Dr. Vorthok of the hive minds. "Negative. While some bird species are consumed, humans actively protect the vast majority of them. They create feeding stations to supplement bird nutrition during harsh seasons. They even modify their architecture to prevent accidental bird deaths." The footage showed human buildings with special glass designed to be visible to birds, preventing collisions that might injure the flying creatures. "There is more," Dr. Kilithan said, her voice rising with excitement. "Humans will risk their own safety to protect these creatures. Observe." The screen showed a human climbing a dangerously tall tree to rescue a young bird that had fallen from its nest. The human was clearly risking serious injury or death to save a creature that weighed less than their hand. "This behavior extends beyond birds," Dr. Kilithan continued. "Humans demonstrate similar protective instincts toward numerous species that pose no threat to them. They have driven themselves to the edge of extinction, fighting to preserve creatures they call endangered species." Professor Thekmore's crystalline structure flickered with confusion. "Dr. Kilithan, are you suggesting that the most effective predator species in known space is also engaged in galaxy-wide conservation efforts?" "That is exactly what I am suggesting. Human space now contains protected nature, preserves that exceed the size of some member worlds. They have declared entire star systems off-limits to development in order to protect indigenous life forms." The implications were staggering. The same species that had psychologically broken the hegemony through ruthless warfare was simultaneously the galaxy's most dedicated protector of vulnerable life forms. Ambassador Rodriguez had been quietly observing from the back of the chamber. Now she stepped forward, having received permission to address the council. "Scientists of the Federation," she began, "I believe I can explain what Dr. Kilithan has discovered. You are seeing the core principle of human nature. We protect What cannot protect itself? The room fell silent. Every sensor and sensory organ focused on her words. Humans are not naturally aggressive, she continued. We are naturally protective. We become aggressive only when something we care about is threatened. The hegemony saw us as weak because we spent our resources protecting small birds and helpless creatures. They thought this made us easy prey. They thought this made us easy prey. They were wrong. They were catastrophically wrong. Every instinct that drives us to save a fallen bird, every impulse that makes us feed hungry animals, every protective urge that leads us to preserve endangered species. Those same instincts activate when our families, our friends, or our allies are threatened. Dr. Kilithan's mandibles clicked with sudden understanding. The psychological warfare, the suicidal attacks, the complete militarization of your population. These were not military tactics. They were protective responses. Exactly. The hegemony wasn't fighting human soldiers. They were fighting human parents, human children, human protectors. They threatened something we cared about. So every human became a guardian. The scientists began discussing among themselves in excited tones. This explained the apparent contradictions in human behavior. They were seeing a species whose primary evolutionary drive was protection rather than predation. But this raises a new question, Professor Thekmore observed. If humans are naturally protective rather than aggressive, what does this mean for galactic security? Ambassador Rodriguez smiled, the expression no longer seeming threatening to the assembled aliens. It means that any species under our protection becomes effectively unconquerable. We've already demonstrated this principle on a small scale. She activated her own holographic display, showing recent developments in human space. Several smaller species had approached humanity, requesting protection from various threats. Human response had been immediate and overwhelming. The Cathari were being enslaved by pirates, she explained, showing footage of human warships eliminating the criminal fleets. We didn't just drive off the pirates. We hunted down every single one and liberated all their victims. The tiny songbirds of Altar 7 were facing extinction from industrial pollution. We relocated our entire mining operation to prevent further damage to their habitat. The pattern was clear. Once humans adopted a species or cause, they defended it with the same relentless determination they had shown against the hegemony. You're saying humans will fight to protect others as fiercely as you fought to protect yourselves? Dr. Kilithan asked. We'll fight harder. Ambassador Rodriguez replied simply. When we were defending Earth, we were fighting for our own survival. Now we're fighting for the survival of creatures that depend on us. That's a much stronger motivation. The revelation sent ripples throughout the galactic community. Species that had viewed humans as potential threats began reassessing their position. If humans were natural protectors rather than predators, aligning with them offered unprecedented security. Within days, the Federation received dozens of requests for formal alliance with humanity. Species facing everything from environmental disasters to military threats sought the protection of the small bipedal creatures who had broken the hegemony's military might. There is one final observation, Dr. Kilithan announced as the session concluded. Human protective instincts appear to scale infinitely. They protect individual birds with the same determination they show protecting entire worlds. This suggests their capacity for caring has no upper limit. Ambassador Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. That's probably accurate. We have a saying, no one gets left behind. It doesn't matter if you're a lost kitten or a threatened civilization. If you need protection, humans will provide it. The galaxy had discovered something unprecedented. A species that grew stronger through caring rather than conquest. The more allies humans made, the more species they protected, the more determined they became to defend their expanding family of friends. The hegemony, monitoring Federation communications from their distant territories, faced a terrifying realization. They hadn't just been defeated by human military capabilities, they had been defeated by human compassion, and that compassion was now spreading throughout the galaxy, creating an alliance bound not by fear or mutual benefit, but by genuine affection and protection. The age of human expansion had indeed begun, but it wasn't the conquest the galaxy had feared. It was something far more revolutionary. The first time in galactic history that a major species had chosen to measure its success by how many others it could protect, rather than how many it could dominate. Birds across the galaxy, both literal and metaphorical, could rest safely under the watchful protection of their unlikely guardians. The humans had arrived, and they brought with them a simple but powerful message. Everyone deserves someone to watch over them. The galaxy would never be the same.